Before we get started, I want to remind everyone that the information in this presentation is not to be or construed as investment advice. The information presented are subject to change without notice, and while we have made every reasonable effort to ensure that the content is reliable and accurate, we have not independently verified the content and are not responsible for errors therein. Please consult a professional advisor before putting a loonie in any of these financial markets. Hi everyone, my name is Richard Diaz and welcome back to the IceCap Canadian Market Wrap. In this week's video, we're going to explore some of the data issues that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. We're going to touch on some of the revisions and discrepancies. I'm going to defend Stats Canada and the important job they have with our economy and for researchers like me. And I'll argue that although the data does suggest the economy has shown some resilience in the face of the tariff threat, overall message hasn't changed much. But first, I want to get something straight. Statistics is hard. There are now 42 million people living in Canada. It is a complex system made up of dozens of sectors, hundreds of thousands of organizations, and billions of transactions every week or day or year. It is a difficult, and I can assure you, a thankless task to collect and disseminate information on Canada's economy and society. The most important repository of this data is, of course, Stats Canada. Their role is essential because they collect reliable, unbiased data that governments, businesses, and researchers like me use to make hopefully informed decisions. Compiling the data is difficult because information comes from different sources in different formats, quality levels, and this makes it hard to clean up, standardize, and combine accurately. It also requires careful methods to avoid errors, protect privacy, and ensure that the final data set is truly representative of reality. Is it perfect? No. Can it be better? Of course it can. But as someone who has analyzed many different economies over the many years that I've been doing this, I can say that Stats Canada is pretty darn good at their job. Even though I don't always agree with their conclusions or their methods or their priorities, I feel that Stats Canada should be defended because independent statistical agencies protect the integrity of public data and ensure it remains accurate, unbiased, and hopefully free from political manipulation. Without them, policymaking, public accountability, and informed debate would all suffer from unreliable or distorted information. Now, people should be skeptical of the data, but not cynical about what is provided, because I think that even high-quality statistical agencies can face limitations or measurement errors, outdated methodologies and sampling challenges, and gaps in data collection. I think the people who work at these stats houses genuinely care, and although they do have bias, are generally unbiased in the way that they disseminate the information. And finally, there are ways to double-check their work, and I'll show you that in a minute. I bring this up because I'm skeptical about the most recent labor force survey data. I'll quickly tell you about it and then tell you why. So quickly, the November labor force survey data suggests that total employment increased by 54,000 people, and that the employment rate rose by 0.1 percentage points to 60.9%, and while the unemployment rate fell by a lot, 0.4 percentage points to 6.5%. Now you can see here the fall in the unemployment rate was driven by the huge drop in youth unemployment, 1.3 percentage points to 12.8% in November. This is a lot and should raise some eyebrows. This reflects that unemployment growth was concentrated among youth aged 15 to 24 and grew by 50,000 in November. There was little change in employment of prime age workers 25 to 54 and people over the age of 55 years old. Now right away, I was a little unnerved by that drop. Straight lines up, down, or side to side should always raise a red flag. But youth unemployment is by definition more volatile than for the rest of the economy. But that drop, the single biggest drop outside of the COVID years, 1 month in 1994 and another month in 2014, was a little suspicious. It's also happened in the wider context of a softer economy, and it deserves some scrutiny. To say that it's totally wrong is unfair, but we will keep a very keen eye on that data point. Outside of youth unemployment, the November jump was driven by a rise in part-time employment, up 63,000. Although most people working part-time do so voluntarily, for example, because they go to school or they care for family members, others do so involuntarily. Involuntary work exists when individuals work part-time because of economic or business conditions, or because they could not find full-time work. And as we can see here, over the past 3 months, part-time employment has increased at a much faster rate than full-time employment. Again, further suggesting that the economy is slowing or was weaker more generally. Stepping back, the labor force survey data seems at odds with overall business sentiment, like the Canadian Services PMI, which has deteriorated over the last few months. In the release, the economist specifically outlines companies' reluctance to hire new employees. And we'll see how this plays out over the next little while. But the main reason that we are taking issue with the labor force survey is that it is at odds with the survey of employment, payrolls, and hours. That's the red line on the chart before you. There's a difference in methodology and uses for these different surveys, but the quick review is that the LFS is a household survey where they interview a representative sample of individuals and then model out the rest of the results. That's a normal practice. Whereas the survey of employment, payrolls, and hours is a business survey based on payroll tax records. Payroll survey is much slower and less volatile, but is widely seen as the more accurate of the two measures of employment. It's also suggesting that there's been zero employment growth over the last year, whereas the labor force survey suggests that employment growth is at nearly 2%. That discrepancy is large and getting wider, and that discrepancy is something that we're really unsure about. What should also be clear from the chart is that although sometimes you do get minor discrepancies, they do usually move together and eventually those discrepancies disappear. And that's why this growing divergence is why we're dubious of the strong labor force data and why we're holding back from drawing any meaningful conclusions from the improvements in employment growth. We also expect that this data will indeed get revised down to the more reliable business survey based again on actual payroll tax records. Another important data set that revealed itself to be wrong, or more precisely to have been revised rather significantly, is GDP, which was released a couple of weeks ago. The Q3 GDP figures published last Friday were accompanied by a significant upward revision for 2022, 2023, and 2024. In all 3 years, real GDP growth was revised up around 0.5 percentage point. And that means the level of real GDP in Q2 is now estimated to be 1.8% higher than previously estimated. This is in part reflected in a large upward revision, 6.4%, to business investment spending, which is a good thing. This is especially true for research and development spending, which we saw in massive revision, and other important CapEx items that we see in the national income accounts. Predictably, the same folks who were dismissing real GDP per capita as useless for a measure of standard of living for people in the economy were now cheering on the massive upward revision that you can see in the chart before you. Again, revisions are normal. But what should be cause for concern for the people at Stats Canada is that the GDP revision was the largest in a decade and followed a similarly large upward revision from last year, which covered the previous 3 years. On one hand, COVID really screwed up the data and the models used to predict economic activity. On the other hand, these unusually large revisions are not sustainable and cast a shadow on the data more generally. It's basically 3 years now, and this discrepancy better revert to its mean next November, or you'll hear from me for sure. Included in these revisions were changes to labor force productivity growth, something we have discussed at length on this channel. And indeed, productivity growth was revised upward significantly. The 10-year compound annual growth rate increased from 0.2 to 0.4%. That's a good thing. However, it does not change the overall conclusion that Canada has been poorly managed, suffers a lack of capex per person. That chart continues to decline. And going forward, Canada will not be able to rely on importing warm bodies to prop up headline GDP growth. And we can see that clearly here with consensus economist forecast stuck at 1.1 for next year. Those are the red dots on the right. It also doesn't change the fact that productivity is poor more generally, growth is weak more broadly, and labor, on which we remain quite unconvinced, continues to languish, especially with full-time work. There's a whiff of stagflation that we can't seem to shake, a conclusion that we raised a couple of weeks ago and is being echoed by the good people at the National Bank of Canada. All right, that's a wrap on this week's episode. Thanks a lot for watching. Please like, subscribe, and follow for more. As you know, it helps with the algos. And as always, we manage money for families all across Canada and the world, so please feel free to get in touch.